Hello, and thank you for joining the Caneberry Educational Conference as part of the 2021 Virtual Southeast Regional Fruit and Vegetable Conference. I am Sial, Associate Professor and Small Fruit Entomologist with the University of Georgia, and will be the moderator for this presentation. I would like to thank Wish Farms for sponsoring the 2021 Caneberry Educational Conference. For your information, pesticide CEU and CCA credits are available for most presentations offered during the live Southeast Regional Conference. Check the pesticide CEU guide for a list of approved presentations and participating states. The pesticide CEU guide is located in the Event Resources tab under the Media player. The guide is also available at the Resources Center located on the main menu of the conference platform. Please note, pesticide credits will only be available for registered attendees and only during the live conference. Pesticide credits will not be available for on-demand viewing. There is a simple three-step process to receive pesticide CEU and CCA credits. Number one, first go to the audience chat box located on the left side of your screen and type your first name, last name, and the states for which you are requesting credits. Again, go to the audience chat box located on the left side of your screen and type your first name, last name, and the states for which you are requesting credits. You will need to do this for every presentation to request CEU credits. Second, the second step is to sign out at the end of every presentation. To sign out, go to the audience chat box and type your first name, last name, and the states for which you are requesting credits. You will be reminded to sign out at the end of the presentation. The third step is to complete the pesticide CEU registration. You only have to complete this registration one time during the conference. This is not required with every presentation. To access the pesticide CEU registration web link, open the pesticide CEU guide on the Event Resources tab located under the Media player. The pesticide registration web link is located on the front cover of the guide. This presentation is pre-recorded to reduce technical difficulties. We will be answering your questions live at the end of the presentation. You can submit a question at any point during the presentation by typing your question in the questions box and pressing send. Don't forget to thank our 2021 conference sponsors and exhibitors by visiting the virtual trade show and featured products pavilion. Lastly, don't forget to join us each morning for coffee chats and each evening for networking. Check the conference agenda for details. Hello. My name is Sial, and I am a blueberry small fruit entomologist at the University of Georgia. Today, I am going to be presenting on strategies to manage spotted wing Drosophila in organic production systems. Before I get into spotted wing Drosophila management, let me give you a brief overview of organic pest management. Organic pest management is a holistic approach that largely depends on the ecological processes and biodiversity in ecosystem. Integrated pest management tactics, principles, and components match organic farming systems perfectly. The goal is to prevent pests from reaching economically damaging levels without causing risks to the environment. Principles of pest management in organic farming systems include prevention, avoidance, monitoring, and suppression when necessary. Successful IPM program in organic farming may have the following components. Number one, monitoring crops for pests, accurately identifying pests, developing economic thresholds, implementing integrated pest control tactics, and lastly, record keeping and evaluation. These are essential components of any successful IPM program, specifically in organic systems. A successful IPM program in organic farming incorporates a variety of pest management tactics that are available, including cultural control, mechanical or physical control, biological control, behavioral control, chemical control, using biopesticides and other OMRI-registered products that are allowed for use in organic systems. These tactics are used individually or in combination, depending on the target pest and the cropping system. Now let's get into the spotted wing Drosophila, which is a vinegar fly of Asian origin. It was first detected in the mainland US in 2008 in California. Since then has spread throughout the US and causing serious damages to all small fruits, especially caneberries. Females of this fly have this very unique ovipositor that they use to oviposit their eggs into a ripe or ripening fruits and cause serious damage there. Once eggs are laid, larvae develop inside the fruit and completely ruin the fruit within very short period of time. Males have this very unique dark spots on the wing margins, which help with easy identification of the males from other similar flies. Once female lays eggs, the whole process of development is very quick. The whole process of development from egg to adult can be completed in 8 to 10 days at 25 degrees centigrade. This, again, depending on environmental conditions, it may happen even faster out in the field when temperatures are higher. With this, it means this fly can go through several generations in a very short period of time during the field season, building up population to high levels rather quickly and causing a lot of damage. Recent estimates show that annual crop losses have been up to $718 million. In addition to those, increased management costs have been estimated to be $129 million. So this is definitely a serious issue and has emerged as a key pest in all berry production systems. A study out of North Carolina State compared the susceptibility or preference of stability, in fact, of different berries that we have. And results show that raspberries were the most preferred host by SWD, followed by strawberry, blackberry, and blueberry. So all of the berry crops are preferred hosts of SWD, and this fly can cause serious damage to these crops. When you look at the timing of the fly populations and activity within the season, earlier in the season when we have strawberries in the southeast, the overall populations are lower, and those fly populations build up actually, as you see here in this line. Then we get into blueberry season, populations are slightly lower, but as soon as we get into those blackberry and raspberry season, populations are higher. And on top of that, these berries, these crops are preferred host of SWD, so this can be a serious challenge in these small fruit caneberry production systems in particular. And when it comes to organic management, that is even additional challenge because we have very few options to control this pest in organic systems. That is why a number of researchers got together from all over the country to build a team. The researchers from 10 major, actually 11 major universities and USDA got together to develop a project, the goal of the project was to develop and implement systems-based organic SWD management programs that are compatible with USDA organic program and true to the ethos of organic agriculture. These programs will be based on a foundation of cultural, physical, and behavioral control tactics bolstered by NOP-compliant insecticides. And this goals of this project, which is funded by USDA NIFA, are to focus on organic production systems and develop sustainable management programs. Our teams worked on monitoring programs and evaluated different attractants that could be used in traps. And what we have found, we actually tested several attractants individually and in combinations. And what we found out that when during the pre-ripening period, our traps trap really relatively few flies. Yeast and sugar plus Sentry perform the best, as you can see here. Yeast, sugar-based baits overall are the most attractive. Baits most effective during the fruit ripening time. Yeast, sugar plus Sentry may provide the best monitoring during the early part of the season. And once you get into the ripening, overall, yeast, sugar traps, when combined with Sentry traps, they were the best of all the products or attractants that we tested. We also did some studies in Georgia to look at phenology of SWD to see what times of the year these flies are active. We had traps in wooded areas as well as in blueberry systems in this case. Our results show that these flies are active year-round in southeastern production systems. Numbers were always higher, for the most part, in wooded areas surrounding blueberry fields in this case. And this fact actually points to the situation where there's always a wooded area, or for the most part, wooded area surrounding blueberries. And the question is, what is located in those wooded areas that these flies can live off of or survive when blueberries or other fruits are not in the field? We did another study to follow up on that, and we found that the pine systems were preferred by SWD, or we trapped higher flies in those systems as compared to other deciduous non-crop blueberry or riparian habitats surrounding the blueberry fields. When we looked inside the pine habitats, we found that this understory was filled with a large number of non-wild plant species. And here's some list of some of those species that could be potential hosts of SWD. And then we did actually a study to see if SWD can survive and complete their development on these hosts. And our results showed enough. There were several species in those pine and understory wooded areas where this fly could lay eggs and complete development. However, when we did another follow-up study to do a choice testing where we had one choice was blueberry and other choice was one of these wild hosts, SWD always preferred blueberry over the other host. That means the burden is always, pressure is always on the crop. And when crop is not in the field, flies can survive through the winter or off season in those wooded areas. There is also another thing that we observe is in some systems, burning inside the woods is a routine thing for their management. And this, at one site, we monitored SWD population at a burnt site and at unburnt site nearby. And we found that burning did actually lower, at least for a short time, lower SWD population at the burnt site as compared to the unburnt site nearby. So this is one thing that you can keep in mind, at least for the short term. When it comes to SWD organic management, biological control always comes first. However, currently we do not have biological control developed as well. There is a lot of work going on. We have some native parasitoids from SWD native range in quarantine right now. We have applied, our team has applied for permits, which are being processed right now. Once we get approval, then we will be able to release those out in the field at some scale to evaluate their efficacy and performance against SWD. We have done some studies to evaluate behavioral control. I will show you some of the results. Cultural control, we have done lots of studies in this project on cultural control, and also chemical control is always the sort of a primary means to go to, and then other programs, other strategies are added depending on the situation. Here is a list of, when it comes to chemical control, for example, here is a list of options that we have in organic, for organic SWD management. As you can see here, Entrust is the most effective of all organic products. We do have some other good materials that have some efficacy, for example, Grandivo, Pyganic, Veratran D, Zera. They can also be used at least to supplement their rotational programs, because we cannot rely on just one product. Resistance can develop really fast if we make repeated applications of Entrust only. So, but unfortunately, there are restrictions on how many times or how much of Entrust can we apply in one field season, as you can see on this slide. Therefore, we have to use those other products to complete, to rotate with a spinosad. We get to the field season in Caneberry production systems in particular. So, and since we have only one really effective product, we did several studies to evaluate other organic materials that were available in the market to evaluate their efficacy and see if there are other ways to improve their efficacy. Here's a list of products that we evaluated in our studies. We conducted several studies out in the field. We evaluated based on the fruit infestation in the field, and also collected samples to semi-field bioassays to determine their efficacy in those small bioassay chambers. Our results show that Entrust again was the most effective product, and Grandivo, Oxidate, Venerate were products that followed Entrust in terms of their efficacy. However, that efficacy did not last very long. Even Entrust did not last more than 3 days. Even a third day, it was same as untreated control. So we don't have really strong effective materials for organic management, except Entrust. We tried to evaluate some adjuvants like Oroboost, Newfilm P, and the Leaf Life. And what we noticed is they did not make much difference. Only in some situations they did help, but not in most cases. In some cases, when added with the Entrust, the day 3 was somewhat effective, but beyond that, we did not see much efficacy. And we then also tested some phagostimulants, for example, adding sugar and yeast to these products to see if they could improve efficacy of these products against SWD. And we, again, when added sugar, some efficacy, there was some additional benefit to Entrust, but there was not a whole lot of benefit that we saw in these studies by adding sugar and yeast to other organic materials. When we are in this situation where efficacy is very sort of low, there are some other ways to improve efficacy in the field. And one way is to make applications at the time when flies are active in the field and not rely on residual efficacy, which is sort of low. We did a study to evaluate the activity of flies in the field, and we found that flies are more active in the field at dawn and dusk times, around those times. So if you are making spray applications, try to target these times when most flies may be out foraging in the field. And that way we will get more benefit of the spray applications as compared to making applications during the time when flies are not active. And we know that residual activity is very low of these organic products. Now, while these products are organic, we did some studies to see how effective would those be against beneficial insects. Are those toxic to beneficial insects? And our results showed we did these studies with several species of beneficial insects. But we found out that, yes, even all these organic products had some toxicity to those beneficial insects. So when we are making spray applications, we should always keep in mind that, avoid the timings when most of the beneficial insects are available, are active out in the field. Also, making spray applications during the dawn and dusk hours helps minimize their impact on beneficial insects. Another issue that we are facing, when we have one product really effective, which is spinosad in this case, or entrust, that gets applied multiple times during the season, and resistance is a high risk in that situation. And we did some studies to screen populations. We standardized protocols, and those studies, those population screenings were done throughout the country in several states. Results from California show that populations have already developed high levels of resistance in California. In Georgia, we haven't seen any resistance until this last year when we did in 2019. This was the first year we started to see some shift in their susceptibility to entrust. Again, this is not high level of resistance at all. It's just some shift that we have seen for the first time. We will keep following these populations, keep testing these populations over the next years, and see how this situation evolves. So now that we are facing issues with the harm to beneficial insects, resistance risk to develop resistance, we need to incorporate other strategies, including behavioral and cultural strategies, to strengthen our organic management programs for SWD. And our team conducted several studies on these areas. For example, in behavioral control, currently we are focusing on two of the promising products. One is using this splat or hooked SWD product, which is sort of a slow release, attract and kill formulation. It has shown some promise under field conditions, as you can see here. In some trials, it did reduce overall overall fruit infestation in the trials that we conducted. And the other technology that we are working on, our team is working on, is a new food-grade gum that reduces SWD oviposition and fruit infestation under field conditions. That was developed by Von Walton's team in Oregon State and has been tested in many crops, as you can see, cherry, blueberry, raspberry, strawberry, and has shown efficacy in all of those crops. They are working on getting this product registered. Once registered, that will be available for field applications. We will continue to evaluate under different conditions to see how effective this product may be in varying conditions. Cultural control strategies is another tool that we need to utilize for organic systems, in particular when our chemical products are not as strong as conventional systems have. The principle behind cultural control is to reduce habitat favorability. For example, when you look at a blueberry bush in the field, in the middle of the canopy where most of the fruit is and where flies will be causing damage, temperature is lower as compared to lower and upper portions. At the same time, relative humidity is relatively higher in the center of the canopy as compared to lower and upper portions. Now, when we move on to the next level and look at the fly activity and oviposition, is always higher in the middle of the canopy, where obviously most of the fruit is and flies will be active, as compared to lower and upper portions of the canopy. So this does show that temperature and relative humidity are the two most important environmental factors that can affect SWD, and we need to manipulate those to affect SWD behavior and activity in the field. You know, how can we do that? There are several ways to do it, you know, including, for example, netting, using different types of irrigation system, or using weed mats or other mulching strategies, pruning the canopies to different intensity, harvest frequency adjustments, or refrigerating after harvest to see if there's any benefit. So our team did studies to evaluate all of these strategies, and I'll give you a kind of quick overview of what we learned, and then there's an online webinar available for details on all of these studies. For example, physical exclusion studies were done in several states, and if done right, mesh netting of less than 1 millimeter works to completely exclude flies, reduce fruit infestation, and improve marketable fruit yield in raspberries and blackberries. And this actually, exclusion technique can control SWD up to 100% in blueberries. In some systems, it can be expensive initially, especially at large scale, but some farmers have developed strategies to utilize or repurpose existing materials to build these tunnels to put those mesh netting over on the top to reduce initial cost. But the benefit is there if you can afford it. And the irrigation type is another strategy that can be adjusted, modified, or to help with SWD activity in the field. For example, when studies were conducted in Oregon State to compare, where they compared drip irrigation with the overhead sprinkler irrigation systems, they always found overhead sprinkler irrigation systems had fields with that system had higher relative humidity in the field, and as a result, more flies emerged from those berries collected from those fields as compared to the fields with drip irrigation. So if you can use a drip irrigation to reduce overall relative humidity in the field, which helps reduce overall SWD activity in the field. Mulching is, again, another strategy. Studies were conducted in several states to evaluate different types of mulches to see how they would affect. The overall principle here is that flies, when they're larvae, when they're fully fed, they come out of the fruit and drop to the ground to pupate in the soil. If we have a mulch on the ground, it will stop the pupae from prevent pupae, the larvae to get into the soil to pupate, and in that process they will be killed. Mulches such as feed fabric, black weed mat, and mylar that provide physical barrier, they can prevent larvae from entering the soil, and definitely they increase surface temperature and decrease SWD survival and fruit infestation in the field. This paper was published. It summarizes studies done in multiple states for details if you're interested. Pruning is another way to modify the environment in the field. Studies were conducted in multiple states in different systems with caneberries and blueberries, and results show that heavy pruning altered microclimate, which affected habitat suitability for SWD. Heavy pruning increased light penetration in the canopy, which increased temperature slightly and decreased relative humidity. And that, as a result, it decreased SWD oviposition and fruit infestation. It may seem to decrease marketable yield in some systems, but at the same time, it may improve spray coverage and also harvest efficiency at the same time. So there are some additional benefits associated with there's slightly heavy pruning as well. In a study in Minnesota, for example, another interesting thing was observed that when they did heavy pruning in those heavily pruned plants, they had higher yield in the earlier part of the season. So it means it can produce larger amounts of fruit during earlier part of the season when overall fly pressure is lower, to avoid heavy infestations during the latter part of the season, which is sort of a common trend. This way it can serve as sort of a crop phenology management strategy as well in some systems. Harvest frequency can also be very helpful. Believing because these flies are attracted to the ripe fruit. The more ripe fruit you leave out in the field, there's a resource that these flies are attracted to, and they can build up their populations higher and are more attracted to the field and cause more damage. If you can frequently harvest those the ripe fruit from the field to remove that resource from the farm or from the field, that will help reduce overall attraction of the field for flies, and in turn reduce the infestation in the fruit infestation at the farm. And the studies show that highest marketable yield per unit effort with a 2-day harvest interval was observed in terms of cost and marketable yield. Sanitation is again important when it comes to SWD. The point is that when we harvest, there's always a ripe fruit, cull fruit on the ground, and if it's left there, that ripes and rots, and it attracts more flies. And this kind of serves as a breeding ground for those flies. If you can remove those cull fruit from and destroy them, that would reduce the attraction of the flies toward the field, and overall less reduce the probability of infestation in the field. There are different ways to do it. You can leave them in the sealed bag containers, in a sealed container or in plastic bags, and leave them out in the sun for 2 to 3 days. You can also bury them in at least 2 feet deep in the ground. That way they will not be able to survive and cause infestation again. Once you have harvested the fruit and you suspect that there may be some fruit infested there, you can still do something, which is to refrigerate the harvested fruit. If you can refrigerate at 32 to 36 degrees Fahrenheit, you can significantly reduce the chances of those flies, those larvae developing into pupae or continuing any further development. What that refrigeration will do, it will, number one, it will prolong the development time for those larvae. They will stay as larvae, will not be able to develop fast, and majority of the larvae will be actually killed at those temperatures. And that way you will have the opportunity to market those fruit without any issues. If you can maintain those temperatures of 32 to 36 degrees from field to packing line to the market, that would be the best way to go. Just to summarize, SWD is a key pest for caneberries and other berry crops in the southeastern U.S. They are active year-round. Flies were captured in all crop and non-crop habitats before and during the fruit ripening, but captures were higher in the wooded areas, the non-crop areas. The reason being there is tall pine stands with lots of non-crop potential hosts in the understory. Overall, in the shades, temperatures is lower, which is in the favorable range for SWD, and the humidity may be slightly higher, which they like. That's why their numbers are slightly higher in those areas. More adult SWD were captured in those areas as compared to the field. Yeast sugar water was the most attractive bait, and it is best for early season monitoring when mixed with Century Low. Impact of heavy pruning varied from one region to another. However, it showed some benefit to reducing overall infestation in the field. And in some cases, as I mentioned, it actually consolidated or actually managed the crop phenology by having more fruit ripen during the earlier part of the season as compared to the less prone plants. If placed appropriately, weed mat can reduce SWD survival on the ground, like weed mat or mylar or any other product that can actually prevent larvae from getting into the soil. Will reduce overall, will prevent those larvae from completing development and reduce SWD population and fruit infestation. If installed appropriately and in a timely manner, exclusion is tunnels or using less than 1 millimeter mesh fabric is the most effective method to prevent SWD infestations, but it excludes pollinator as well. So it's kind of a trade-off, and some planning will need to be done when implementing these exclusion strategies. And from chemicals, Entrust is the most effective organic insecticide. However, other products, including Pyganic, Grandivo, Venerate, and Azera, could be used as rotational partners based on our studies. Organically approved insecticides can have negative effects on beneficial insects. So when making those applications, keep in mind to avoid exposure of the beneficial insects as much as possible. Now that spinosad resistance has been documented in California, we are continuing to monitor, and we always should rotate products with spinosad to minimize repeated applications of Entrust as much as possible to delay the development of resistance against that. We have developed, our project team has developed several resources for growers to benefit. This is an extension bulletin that was developed to summarize all organic management strategies for SWD in organic systems, that can be used. The bottom line is that when to make a pest management action is based on understanding of which pest is present. Obviously, SWD is one, but there will be other pests too. How many there are and the type of injury they cause and how that injury translates to yield loss. What management tools are selected is based on understanding of which will cause the fewest unintended side effects. That should be back in the mind. There is a lack of real-world information on sport due to sport wild pollinator health recommendations. Small fruit yield and quality is increased with insect pollination. SWD is the key pest. Always save SWD effective insecticides for the harvest season and use other materials for secondary pests. Just as a bottom line, controlling SWD requires a rigorous, persistent, and diverse management plan using as many tools and control techniques as possible on your farm will help reduce SWD infestation. For effective management, follow these key points. Before start of the growing season, implement cultural control strategies such as pruning, weed mat, using weed mats as mulching, as preventative measures if feasible at your farm. Monitor fields with traps. You just use simple yeast sugar traps to monitor and check the traps weekly, starting from the fruit set until end of the harvest. Make sure to check the trap flies and correctly identify the SWD to determine their presence and number. As soon as SWD is detected in the trap, while berries are ripening or ripe, implement management strategies which include using exclusion netting if possible, decreasing your harvest intervals, keeping your planting clean by removing and destroying leftover fruit, and using recommended organic and NOP compliant insecticides to protect the fruit if it becomes necessary. While selecting insecticides, take into account the efficacy, chemical class, harvest date, pre-harvest interval, re-entry restrictions, and your target market. If you are exporting food, also check carefully on the maximum residue limits for the destination country. Make insecticide applications early in the morning or late in the evening to target peak SWD activity periods. Calibrate your sprayer before making insecticide applications to ensure proper coverage. Make sure to integrate cultural and physical control methods and rotate other classes of insecticides with interest to delay resistance development. Continue to evaluate your management programs with monitoring SWD populations and sampling ripe and ripening fruit regularly to determine whether your program is working and respond in a timely manner if needed. Stay informed of your regional SWD pressure and new management techniques by using the resources listed below. And also, contact your local extension personnel if you have questions. There's an excellent resource, it's a spray guide. It does provide information on what to use when you have SWD and also other pests in Caneberry systems. With that, I would like to thank our collaborators in my lab and the sponsors who provided funding for this OREI project and other projects that are partially supporting research in my lab. With that, I'll take any questions that you may have. Thank you.